The Cavaliers were listed as a Brandon Ingram trade option. We have heard this before. Koby Altman clearly poked around it in the preseason. There was talk of Jarrett Allen. Now we think it could be Karis LeVert or George Niang for Brandon Ingram. But we're going to talk about the report, what you guys think about it, and more involving the Cavaliers being a listed trade option for Brandon Ingram. Hey everybody, Billy BB back with you on Cavs Digest. This is a full circle video because when this channel started, this was one of the very first things we talked about in the offseason, and at the time it was possibly the Cavs would trade Jarrett Allen for Brandon Ingram. This was even, I think, before the Cavs had hired Kenny Atkinson, so we've come a long way, which is why I'm excited to jump into this one today. We've got a lot to talk about coming up. Dean Wade with an injury. He's going to be out a few weeks. We're going to need to discuss that and more going on with the Cavaliers as they bounce back, getting a win against the Detroit Pistons last night. Good hustle on defense. Good to get things back on track defensively and get a win at home. But be sure to subscribe, drop down in the comments. I want to gauge people's interest today. I want to know what people think about this potential trade. If this is one of those trades you're tired of hearing about, so forth and whatnot. So be sure to subscribe, and then as always, drop down into the comments. We're excited to talk about it more and more and more with you guys. I know on the last video, the mention of Jonas Valanciunas had a lot of people giving their opinion of what the Cavs need to right the ship. We talked a lot about what was wrong with the Cavaliers too. So excited to jump into that. So Brandon Ingram, as I said, preseason, in the offseason, around the 4th of July, I believe is when I made the video. Brandon Ingram, a former All-Star in 2022 with the New Orleans Pelicans, rumored to be one of the guys the Cavs targeted, especially preseason. I mean, they just needed a wing. They needed to mix things up. It looked like the core four weren't going to stay together. I mean, a lot has happened since that initial trade talk. And now you get to almost the All-Star break now, mid-season, and I think there's a discussion worth having about Brandon Ingram. But personally, before we get this thing going, I am tired of it. I don't think this is serious. I don't think it's a good fit. And I think anyone who pays attention to the Cavaliers doesn't have any real idea. However, Bleacher Report does these live creator moments on the app to discuss different things. So they just bring in, not necessarily experts or reporters, but they bring in different NBA content creators. So they would hopefully be the people you would assume pay attention to the league. And one of them was from Snapback Sports. His name's 3 Cone. That's one of those things where I'm sorry, but who are we hearing from? Either way, I think it'd be worth a look here before we jump into the video from Cone and talk about why Ingram would be a fit for the Cavaliers. Here's his stats this season. Now, I do want to say, only 18 games. That is definitely one of the things that right away, right, you're going to start thinking he has not played much. He's not been healthy this year. Now, I think there's a health thing where you're either hurt at the beginning of the year or the end of the year, and you can get healthy and get ramped up, and I think that's possible. But yeah, I mean, he's a scorer. He's a lengthy defender, grabs a few rebounds and can dish the ball a little bit. We'll get into the pros and cons of what I think, but I do want to jump into the report and why the Cavaliers were listed as a suitor for Brandon Ingram.
Mention the Cavs and say, don't say the Cavs, you don't know ball. I do have the Cleveland Cavaliers on this list. Now, I don't have them high, and ultimately, the more that I think about it, I'm not sure if I would do this if I'm Cleveland just because they've been playing so well, and maybe instead of going after a BI, because in my opinion, if you trade for Brandon Ingram and you are Cleveland, who I do think could use an upgrade at that wing spot, it probably ends up being a rental, because I don't know if you want to pay BI like $35 million when you have Garland, you have Donovan Mitchell, you have Evan Mobley, you have Jarrett Allen. Like, you have so many guys to pay. The money works almost perfectly if you do Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, and George Niang. And ultimately, I like, that's a trade package I'd be willing to give up for BI. But then it's like, this is basically your chance. And if Ingram isn't willing to resign, or if you decide not to resign if it doesn't work out, then you're in a really tough spot financially going into next season. You don't have a lot of money to re-up some of that depth that you've lost in Cleveland, being a deep team. It's been huge for them this season. So, there are big-time question marks. And with a team that, sure, yeah, they've been struggling a little bit more as of late. They've lost a lot more games recently. They no longer have the best record in the NBA after having it for pretty much the entire season. Like, I don't know if you, even though that's happening, I don't know if you want to mess with the chemistry of a team that is playing as well as Cleveland is. And there have been reports, I can't remember who it was from, might have been Windhorst, but somebody was saying Mark Stein potentially that the Cavs are, cognizant of that, which I'm not surprised that they're thinking of that, because that's something I'm considering too, because it feels like, hey, like a Cam Johnson could be awesome here, or I think Dorian Finney-Smith could have been great here too. Of course, that trade already happened to the Lakers. I know a lot of Cavs fans I've been seeing on Twitter and in other places have been really pushing for some type of 3-and-D wing, really just any wing presence to land with Cleveland at the deadline. But it is also like this team is playing really, really well. Do you want to disrupt that? Ultimately, I think you've got to take a little bit of a swing if you're the Cavaliers, just because you haven't been in this spot really ever since LeBron was drafted with a team that didn't have LeBron James on it. You got to kind of take advantage of that with the way you've been playing. So ultimately, Ingram, I think, provides an interesting dynamic to this team. It gives them a little bit more size out there in the wing, which I think they could definitely use. It gives them a shot creator, somebody that I do think.
Okay, I do want to cut the video off there because he just kind of keeps going on and on with a couple more reasons, but definitely listing the need for a wing. I think that's viable for the Cavaliers. They do need a wing. That's worth mentioning with Ingram. Before we jump into all that with the thoughts there from 3 Cone, I think here's your options to trade for Brandon Ingram. It is Strus, who just got back and is seemingly going to be the starting small forward for the Cavaliers while Dean Wade is injured. Karis LeVert, George Niang, I think those two would have to go together. Maybe Strus and Niang, one of the two, and then you'd have to pair your 2031 first-round pick. So that is what I think you would have to give up. So automatically, I want to hear from you. Drop down in the comments. Are you comfortable giving up LeVert and Niang, Strus and Niang, the 2031 first-round pick? Maybe Jalen Tyson gets in there to get Brandon Ingram. I want to know what you would be willing to give up if you did want to get Brandon Ingram. Drop down in the comments. Let me know kind of what you think you'd be willing to give up there. So here's my pros and cons list for Brandon Ingram. You do have a great scorer. That's why he's an all-star. 22 points per game. More of a scoring threat than Dean Wade. I believe more of a consistent scoring threat than Karis LeVert. More lengthy. Look, defensively, at least you can put some more length out there. Have that length on the wing, especially compared to Okoro. And then he's a rental. So if it doesn't work out, if things get a little crazy, if he's not what you expected, you let him walk. He's not healthy. As I said, he's only played 18 games this season. He's not known as a defender. So you need help on defense on the wing. Why are you trading for a wing who doesn't play defense? He also wants an extension. I think that's part of it. Now, the final thing I will add about it, my feeling on getting a Brandon Ingram is you formally had to give up Jarrett Allen for Brandon Ingram, is what it seemed. Now, if you can package, in my opinion, a Strus and a Niang, or a LeVert and a Niang for Brandon Ingram, I think that's quite the change of pace. But overall, I have landed on, I don't think this is an option for the Cavaliers. I don't think Brandon Ingram is any sort of fit or something the Cavaliers are looking at. If they got him, it's a huge depth piece. It's more scoring on the wing. It's a little bit more length on the wing. I don't know. They love Dean Wade. I know he's hurt, but I don't even know if you could say Ingram would start headed into the playoffs, just because they'd want Dean Wade playing defense on those guys. But drop down in the comments, let me know what you think, and we'll keep you updated when you subscribe to Cavs Digest.